Making sure the folks in the back can hear me. You can never tell with the size of the room and the crowd whether you have the right kind of volume. So if you can't hear me at any time, don't hesitate to put the old classic universal symbol up to the, hand up to the ear, and that'll tell me that I gotta speak up. I don't mind that advice and guidance at all. Thank you again for coming out tonight. Thank you for taking an active interest in your community and in the issues that are important to you. As Michael said, we hope to have a respectful dialogue. Understandably, when we talk about sensitive, challenging subjects, people can be emotional about that. And while I respect the emotion, we have to make sure that we respect one another with civil dialogue. That's the purpose of these community engagement nights, is so that we can talk about some of these maybe challenging issues and allow for an exchange of ideas in a meaningful way. Many of you are constituents, many of you are not. For those of you that are, you've elected me to be your representative. And I think what that means is I have to do a bit of research, form opinions on subjects, and communicate to you what those opinions are, and allow for an exchange of ideas such that if you disagree with those opinions, or you have an alternate idea, or even a nuance to an idea, that you can share those ideas with me. My job is to listen to you. Sometimes people mistake the idea of listening as being agreeing. Well, that's not my job. My job isn't necessarily to agree with you, but I will listen to you. That's the exchange of ideas. And you might, if you speak with candor and you speak with research and thoughtfulness, you might actually convince me. You never know. I'm listening to some guy talk these days on a book that I'm reading, and he says, if you're going to be able to persuade people, you have to be first persuadable. And I think that's good advice. So, with that being said, let's jump in. Abortion is an important topic that deserves much consideration. Abortion has quickly become the center of attention, as you know, since the overturn of Roe v. Wade. Sadly, much of the communication is shouting matches, slogans, and memes. There has been more heat than light shed on the issue. Passion on this topic is understandable, as everybody feels there are key rights at stake. Yet, do we slow down to consider whose rights are at stake, and do we consider what rights are at stake? Answering those two questions, I think, is imperative to understanding this topic. And as such, I plan on addressing these questions tonight before looking at common objections to current Wisconsin law. Afterwards, as Michael said, I will take your questions and comments. First of all, whose rights are at stake in abortion? Certainly the mother has some rights. After all, she's a human being with an inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But we must ask the question, is there another human being also involved in this situation? Since this is a question of life, I think it is best to let science answer the question. Too often we simply hear the word fetus, and we may be led to believe it's just a clump of cells. That, I think, quite honestly, is the point of the term fetus. I think it's to stop us from asking the question, but is it a human being? Why should we be afraid of asking questions and following the science and data to see where it leads? We know a lot more about the human body now than we did years ago. We are able to identify that each human being has a unique DNA code. In your body, every one of your cells carries with it your DNA, whether it's a blood cell, a hair cell, or a cell in your liver. Your DNA is different from mine. That is why DNA evidence is so helpful in criminal trials. It is an undeniable marker of identity. So, what do we find when we look at a fetus? If it's simply part of the mother's body, like a fast-growing hair or nail, then it would have the same DNA as the mother. But it doesn't. From the moment of conception, a growing child has unique DNA, which suggests that it is a distinct human being. Now, whether it can survive outside the womb on its own or not does not affect this simple fact. The preborn child is a distinct being. DNA is also species specific, which means it reveals that the DNA of a fish, for instance, is different from that of a snake and certainly different than that of a human being. The DNA of a fetus is a human being. One might argue, yes, it's human, but it's not a living human being. Well, then let's consider, what are the marks that tell us a human being is living? Society has historically looked at two things: a heartbeat and brain waves. The heart, as you know, is the source of life. It circulates blood throughout the body. Without it, the body dies. When someone's heart stops beating, we try to restart it. If we can't restart it, we pronounce that individual as dead. If the stopping of a heart marks death, then the starting of a heart, I think perhaps, might reasonably indicate the beginning of life. So when does a preborn child have a detectable heartbeat? Our current technology allows us the ability to detect a heartbeat as early as 6 weeks after conception. At just 6 weeks old, a preborn child has a detectable heartbeat, the sign of life. To do anything to intentionally cause that heart to stop would be the ending of human life. Now, what about brain waves? Sometimes the lack of brain waves is actually used to pronounce death. Therefore, the detection of brain waves would mark then the beginning of life. Synapses along the spinal cord, which connect to the brain through the central nervous system, can be detected just 5 weeks after conception. Fetal movements, the sign of independent brain activity. Fetal movements begin during the 6th week of development. There are also studies that demonstrate a preborn child can feel pain as early as 12 weeks after conception. An abortion after 12 weeks causes physical pain to the child. Now, Planned Parenthood's website asserts that a fetus does not feel pain until the 3rd trimester. However, science tells us otherwise. One more argument that is sometimes advanced to denying living status to a preborn human being. People argue that only when the baby can live on its own outside the womb should it be protected. But in reality, many individuals are immensely dependent upon others to live. Consider, for instance, they might be severely disabled, or they might have any number of maladies that are associated with old age. Surely they should not be denied the right to life or considered somehow less than human simply because they depend upon others for their survival. Our vast medical knowledge makes the reality abundantly clear. A fetus is a preborn human being distinct from its mother. And as a human being, our Declaration of Independence is clear. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men, now don't get distracted with that, that's a commonly accepted term back then to refer for people, right? We hold these truths self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, the document says, governments are instituted. Given this, it is absolutely the government's business to make just laws around abortion. To fail to do so would be to fail to secure the inalienable rights for a vulnerable population with no voice. Contrast this, if you will, with the recent rhetoric from a so-called reproductive rights attorney in an interview recently on Wisconsin Eye. She was asked, quote, "When is a fetus a human being?" And her answer was, quote, "Whenever the mom wants it to be." An intelligent lawyer can't even give a logical or fact-based answer. The facts, I'm afraid, are inconvenient for the radical position of abortion on demand up to the point of birth, and in some cases, even shortly thereafter. Let's turn to the second question. What rights are at stake? Some people say that a woman's right to her own body and privacy is primary. Recall, as we've shown earlier, the preborn child is within the woman's body, but not her body. It has distinct DNA from the mother. It has its own heartbeat, its own brain waves. It can feel pain separate from the mother. Now imagine if we allowed mothers to have the discretion on the life of the child until the child was no longer dependent. I know some of you who have raised teenagers, you're like, oh, well, let's see. But what if we said, oh, well, at least until they could eat on their own and use the potty? Should mothers be allowed that discretion? We don't let mothers end the lives of their toddlers because taking another person's life is wrong. Neither should people be allowed to end the life of their preborn child. This is not about interfering with a woman's personal choice. This is about protecting a child's life. The government is morally and constitutionally compelled to take an interest in protecting people from harm. Well, what do we do when the rights of two competing persons, in this case mother and child, are at stake? Here it is key to think about the priority of rights, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. They were written, I believe, intentionally in that order. You cannot pursue happiness if you are not free. You do not have liberty if you are dead. The right to life is the most foundational of those rights because every other right depends on it. The right to life trumps every other right in priority. As such, no perceived right of the mother would ever overcome the right of the child to life, except perhaps in protecting her own life. The only argument one could make would be if the mother's life was in danger, because then we are talking about two competing rights to life. As you recall, self-defense is a legitimate defense in the case of the threat of death. Saving the mother's life by performing an abortion is defensible. This is consistent with Wisconsin law, which dates to 1849. We've now established that the person, the preborn child, is a distinct being, human being, with inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is true either from the moment of conception, as in the case of DNA, or at a minimum when we can detect a heartbeat or brainwaves. And the right of the child to life must supersede any right claimed by the mother, with the exception, perhaps, of defending her own life. Yet this still leaves us with a number of questions. Like, what is the current law in Wisconsin? Wisconsin has a law on the books that remains still in effect, Statute 94004. This statute correctly defines a preborn child as from the moment of conception, which lines up with the evidence from DNA. It does not criminalize the mother, only the person who performs the act of intentionally destroying the life of the child. And it is an exception, it has an exception for life-threatening situations for the mother. Some people discredit the statute that bans the abortion in Wisconsin because it was first written in 1849. Of course, we've never heard the media, trial attorneys, quote, reproductive rights attorneys, any political party, or any desperate politician ever suggesting that murder should be legal because, after all, the law has been around since the very beginning of the state in 1848. We've never heard that. The year it was written is not relevant to the intention or the quality of this law. There are many documents important to our country's history and to our health today that were written over 150 years ago. Why do we still follow those laws? Because they work. Because we believe in them. The Constitution itself was written almost 250 years ago, and we still follow it today, at least most of the time. The Declaration of Independence was written about 250 years ago, and we still believe in those principles. The Emancipation Proclamation was written over 150 years ago, and we still agree that all people are and deserve to be treated as free and equal citizens. The law should be weighed on its merits, not when it was written. I would assert that, in fact, medical technology of today and the advancements of science since 1849 make the law even more justifiable than when it was written. I mean, they didn't know the stuff that we know today. We know a lot more about the preborn today than we did then. So, next question. What about, why not include an exception for rape or incest? Good question. Rape and incest are despicable acts. The victims of rape and incest need our love and support. We must punish individuals responsible for those crimes at such a magnitude as to serve as a strong deterrent. But abortion does not punish the criminal. It would instead create a second victim from the one crime. For a lot of people, this is a challenging question, and I respect that. No matter how the child is conceived, as we've pointed out, they are a living being. It still has the inalienable right to life. We need to be clear. The mother is not being forced to keep the child or take care of the child. There are other options that do not require the mother to raise the child. There are families that are eager to adopt. We know this. What is being prohibited is the ending of the life of the child. This is similar to how any parent can file a petition asking the state to take care of their children at any age if they are not able to. But the state does prohibit a parent from taking a child's life. The state won't force you to raise a child, but the state is morally obligated to prevent the killing of a child. In terms of abortion policy, we need to also examine the data to put policy in the right perspective. That's our job as policymakers. I hate to boil these things down to statistics, but it's important for us to have informed ideas on the subject when considering policy. Only about 5% of women in the United States who were raped, this is according to a study done by Holmes et al. In 1996, only about 5% who are raped end up pregnant. I don't know if that's true or not. This is from 1996, a study was done. If somebody's got other studies, I'd be happy to look at those studies. The Guttmacher Institute also did a study in 2004 and found that only about 0.5% of all abortions are due to rape or incest. Again, I'm taking their word for it. If you've got other studies, I'm happy to look at those studies. While I recognize the brutality of rape and incest, these cases are rare, and therefore, in my opinion, cannot hold a large influence over public policy. It's important to see that many people are using these examples, the examples of rape and incest, to try to argue for on-demand abortions for all pregnancies. If they were really concerned about the victims, they would be arguing for a policy that limits abortion except in these cases. Instead, they use these tragic situations to advance their agenda of on-demand abortion through the duration of pregnancy. And that's wrong. Another question that gets asked is, what about the health of the mother? Many articles lately tell us of nurses and doctors who are concerned about the law in Wisconsin and what it allows them to do. Things are not as complicated as they suggest. There may not be a step-by-step manual for every situation. But if medical professionals do everything they can to save both the child and the mother before turning to abortion as the absolute line of defense, they will be fine. The law grants this provision. A recent opinion piece in the Capital Times described how a teenager getting pregnant should be allowed to have an abortion, as a pregnancy would ruin her prospects for a good education and potentially challenging situation and challenge an otherwise bright future. The op-ed completely ignores the probable lifelong emotional scars and long-term mental health consequences for the young woman from killing her baby. Furthermore, the opinion is a demonstration of the desire to put one person's pursuit of happiness in priority over another person's right to life. Science makes it clear that life begins before birth. Whether we use the presence of human DNA, the sign of a heartbeat, the indication of brain waves, physical movement by the baby, or the documented evidence that the baby can feel pain, we have enough information today to recognize the existence of human life. Birth status provides no excuse. Our laws do not allow a parent who is experiencing extreme anxiety and stress to kill her 2-year-old toddler or 6-month-old baby. Our laws should not allow the killing of a baby in the womb. Another question. Well, what if the baby's going to die anyways, or be born with serious genetic defect? There's a fundamental difference between life ending by itself and intentionally ending a life. That difference is what separates natural death from a murder. Life is precious. When we value life, we recognize that it is still worth trying to keep alive a genetically defective child as long as possible and allow nature, and dare I say, God, to decide the fate of that child. In a study from 2004, only 13% of abortions were due to concerns about the fetus's health. Furthermore, only about 10 to 15% of pregnancies are considered non-viable. This data suggests that the minority of situations, again, are being used rhetorically by those who want on-demand abortion for any situation up until birth. Ronald Reagan once said, "I've noticed that everyone who is for abortion has already been born." See, we've been given a precious gift. We've been given the gift of life. It is us that are now faced with the choice of denying that right to others or passing it on. As we look back on our history, we are all rightly ashamed of those who treated human beings as less than human, as objects, as property or slaves. How could our predecessors have been so blind to not see what was so clear? That we are all human beings created by God and deserving the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What about us? Will we be like those who helped end slavery? Or those who claimed that owning slaves was a right? Will we defend the right to life? Or treat a whole class of human beings as property? Our property to do with what we want. We cannot go back in time and erase the 50-year stain of abortion, but we can correct course for a more promising future. Imagine the cultural impact of valuing life. What might be possible in a society that values the dignity of life, a society that recognizes the worth of every individual, that believes each child deserves an opportunity? Let us begin to create that culture of life. Thank you for your time and attention.